I'm just going to jump in now and bring on our guest, Meg Schmitz, whom I've known for a number of years. This is a little bit of revenge because I've been on her podcast a couple of times. So now I get to put her in the hot seat. And let's just kind of start off, Meg, if you would just introduce yourself to the group. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into being a franchise broker and an entrepreneur and business starter and business expert. And then you and I have kind of talked about a few questions to bring up here, but the goal here is for everyone on the call to weigh in with their questions about entrepreneurship, business formation, franchise opportunities. What's that about? How could I do it? Why should I do it, et cetera?
Perfect. So my name is Meg Schmitz. I have two nicknames. I am the franchise guru, and that was thanks to the Wall Street Journal. And then I'm also the franchise fashionista. So if you're in my sphere and we were visiting in person, I'm always dressed to the nines. So it's when you have a reputation like that and someone bestows that kind of a nickname on you, then you better pony up.
That's a heavy responsibility.
Every day. What's really funny about that is that my husband and I vacated LaSalle Street and Wall Street at the beginning of the pandemic, and we are now up on 400 acres in Wisconsin. So I do dress like this every day, but I also wear my very sensible flat shoes.
Is this kind of like a bit of a Green Acres kind of a thing that's going on there?
Great reference. It is absolutely perfect reference. I am Ava Gabor.
Yeah, good. There we go. So some of us on the call are old enough to remember that.
Yeah.
I just wish, Meg, some of my clients or recruits would understand that even though we're doing things on Zoom, you still have to dress the part.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And so it's such a funny story. At the beginning of the pandemic, when everything was shut down, we were here in Wisconsin, had just decided to stay here because we've got 400 acres of fresh air. My husband he works downstairs, and he came upstairs. He said, "What is wrong? You're usually this happy, energetic. I don't have anywhere to wear my big girl shoes and my pretty girl clothes." And so we turned the top floor of our office into a beautiful art gallery and Zoom gallery. So I am conducting monthly meetings, and I have my own podcast. It's called The Free Agent with Meg Schmitz. That's what John was referring to. All of you, if you're in some sector of career change, you are a free agent. And many of you are looking for a new team. What I do and have for the last 22 years, I've been a franchise consultant with a company called FranChoice. That's what's in my name there. I'm an independent consultant who works with individuals and investors who are pursuing the goal, the dream of owning their own business. Whether it's an entrepreneurial startup, a resale business opportunity, or a franchise opportunity, I work with anyone who has curiosity about diversification. I think I'm 61. We're all facing ageism at some point in our career. And the beautiful thing about owning your own business is you are your own boss. You can never be fired again. And yes, it's a heavy responsibility, but some of you are entrepreneurial already. And I would also venture to say, if you're married, have kids, corporate warrior, you're perfect material to own a franchise, because everyone is looking for that sense of belonging, waving a banner, representing a brand that really represents you. How I got here started at the beginning. I think I was 28 years old when my husband at the time went to a franchise expo in Chicago, and he came home and said, "I've always wanted to own my own business. And if you do a franchise, it's really easy. You turn on the lights, unlock the door, and you're making money." And I said, "Gosh, that sounds really too simple." I have a hard time believing that it's quite that simple. But in the world of franchising, the good news is you don't have to start from scratch. It is a proven operating system. Everyone knows what the rules of the game are, what the customer expectation is. So that's why corporate warriors make excellent franchise owners, because you're already representing a brand with a motto, with a tagline. Now you can just shift gears into a different kind of a posse or camaraderie. So we got into great clips. I don't cut hair, never did, never will. Went from 1 unit to 2 to 3. We ended up getting divorced at unit number 3. no alimony, no child support, take the businesses. So the guy, my husband, who started it all, wanted to give up on the businesses and the marriage. So that's how I ended up being a 3-unit franchise owner with a system I had no connection to. I had no affinity for, but I did take it over and I wrangled that thing and I love the money. Franchising is so much more than just food, and we'll get into that. But along the way, because it looked the way that it was supposed to look and did what it was supposed to do, someone made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And that's when I jumped the fence from my first time as a business owner over to the consulting side. So here I am now at 61, and my husband and I own 5 businesses. One of them is a franchise, but we are entrepreneurs, and he has his preference. He likes risk. I'm on the other side of things. I'm more risk averse. So I would rather not be an entrepreneur starting from scratch. I would rather be a franchise owner following a recipe. So I've been, as I said, 22 years a business consultant, and generally work with executives in transition. So that's really my sweet spot, is working with people like you who are facing a decision. Do you stay in? Do you get out? Can you do both? And that's a conversation I love to have.
Great. So many questions come up around this. You and I have kind of workshopped a few of these questions going in. Just to kind of lead off on this, what are some of the common misconceptions that people have about franchises? One of them, you were just saying, it's more than food. I think that the other thing to say about franchises, which I've observed, is that it's also more than brick and mortar. So educate us, if you will, about what's the breadth and the depth of the kinds of businesses that you can get involved in as a franchisee.
So I'm going to change it a little bit. I frequently get asked, what is hot in franchising? Like, where are the consumer dollars? What should I be paying attention to? I've got 10 areas: kids, pets, parents, health, fitness, wellness, beauty. Technology is a big one right now. The silver tsunami is a big one right now. And home services. And that could be anything like painting, roof, fence, anything around the house.
All right. So I was taking notes quickly. I didn't get all of them. I got 6: kids, pets, parents, tech, silver tsunami, home services. And what were the other 4?
Health, fitness, wellness, and beauty.
Got it. Many of those sound like they are brick and mortar, but I would assume that many of them are not. And how does that work in a non-brick and mortar franchise? I think we all kind of understand the model of the brick and mortar, how that works. But I'm curious as to how this is now evolving in a digital age.
And so the pandemic gave us a really clear view of, what does our home look like? Are you tired of the window treatments? Are you tired of the paint on your walls? Maybe you need new flooring. So any of those, John, would be territory-based businesses, not brick and mortar. You don't take your home in to get cleaned. Somebody comes to your home in order to clean it. Any of those other fire, smoke, water damage, the company is going to send a representative out in order to give you an estimate. So that would be a non-brick and mortar.
Right. So kind of repair, all kind of services, remote delivered services.
Yeah. And a good one, for example, with kids is mobile tutoring. We've got mobile dog grooming. They'll come to you. Mobile car washing. They'll come to you.
Mm-hmm. And so why, and this is another one of the questions that you have there, for something like a mobile grooming or some kind of a service that you can perform yourself, why would you hook up with a franchise versus starting yourself, expanding it? I have one mobile grooming truck. I figured out the business. I got the clientele. Let me bring on another truck and another operator. Why would I not do it that way?
Because most people never get that far. is the bottom line answer. People, and my husband and I work with entrepreneurs. We're invested, I think, in 125 different startups right now. We see entrepreneurial behavior all the time, and most people never get to actual execution to realize revenue, to understand their profit model. So that's the number one challenge of why not start it from scratch? Well, do you have the chops to actually start it from scratch, launch it, and then monetize it? That's the challenge.
Got it. Got it. So what's kind of the arc, the kind of the time and the commitment arc for someone who says, okay, I've been thinking about this for a certain amount of time, maybe years, but I'm kind of looking at the timeline, looking at what's going on in my life. I've got the bandwidth to do it. Either I'm retired or I'm going to be retired. I don't want to stop. Kids are grown. Where do I start? What are my expectations about how long it's going to take to do it? And I want to kind of carve out the investment side of it as well to kind of cover that in a separate question.
Okay, so I have worked with individuals over the years who are as young as 25. Actually, I'm working with a guy right now who's 25 years old, but historically, and some of the younger people are coming out of college and saying, I don't want to work for somebody else. I think I want to work for myself. They don't necessarily have the experience to do that. On the other end of the spectrum, I think the oldest person I placed in a franchise, it was 72 years old, Californian, had come out of the Air Force. And so he had a number of years of retirement behind him already, but gas in the tank and really wanted to be engaged in his community, make a difference. And so we found an opportunity. And that was another territory opportunity, actually, for him to work with other seniors.
Interesting.
The age range really doesn't matter as much as where are you, and everyone's life is different, but where are you along with your spouse, because most of these decisions are never made in a vacuum by yourself. So, and John, you and I have talked about this. Your wife, your life, and your money are the three most important things to me. If those are working for you already, then let's talk about how a franchise might dovetail in and not disrupt what's already working, but give you the financial outcome, money in, money out, give you the financial outcome, as well as it's got to coalesce with your lifestyle and, and what's important to you.
Yeah, it's got to line up.
Yep.
Bob, I know you've got a question. I want to just drill down a little bit on the timeline here. If I were to say today, Meg, let's talk after this call, when can I expect to basically be up and running?
And the answer on that, John, is it depends.
It depends, of course.
All right. So if you and I were to start,
right?
If you and I were to start the conversation this afternoon, I would tell you that doing the initial research into should I own a business or shouldn't I? And is a franchise the best vehicle for me to drive down the road? That process with me, and it's very process oriented, is about 6 to 8 weeks. It's not necessarily that we found the right opportunity yet, but getting that clarity on, yes, I want to do this, got the bandwidth, and yes, franchising is the right vehicle. If you were to choose a brick and mortar, of course, it takes longer generally with that because you will be working with the franchise company and the real estate department to identify the correct real estate location or locations. Some people get into multiple unit opportunities. That can take anywhere from, if it's a business in a box and it doesn't take a lot of build out, that might take you 6 months. And then on the longer end, bigger build out, you think about restaurants and kitchens and seating, and that'll easy going to take you over a year, maybe 18 months to get to. Now, if it's a territory-based business, you might have an office. Go get an office at WeWork. That's really easy to get a shared office space for many of them. I always recommend that, by the way, and don't do it from home unless it's something where you really are private and protected, but otherwise generally suggest getting an office space, but that's easy. Launching from there is typically, you've got training, There may be some other technical setup, grand opening marketing. That's important to the franchise companies, is that your target marketing in your area to get that phone to ring so that when you're hiring, you know how many people you need to hire for the jobs that are coming in. So there is a period of time that you could launch more quickly than 3 months, but they may want you to spend more time on marketing so that you're driving trial.
Got it. Bob, let me throw it to you for your question.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Meg, I have a podcast called People in Transition. So it is, college senior to first job, between jobs to entrepreneur, job to retirement. And I've had a couple of franchise brokers on in the past, and fascinating what you do. But one of the statistics that was real clear to me that that you would talk with each of those franchise brokers about is how many of these franchise businesses are still going, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years after launched. And that's really important. It's not as much, did you find me a franchise? Is it a going concern? I'm curious what you're seeing in terms of results on that still going concerns.
Sure. I've got a graphic that I actually use in that monthly presentation I was suggesting. John, I can share that with you.
Sure.
I'm happy to do so.
If you have it handy, we can do a screen share and you can put it up.
Let me fill in the airspace while I look for that.
Okay.
The answer, actually, there's a slide that I have. It came from the government. So whether you want to believe it or not, we're in that age of questioning what we see. But I do have a graphic in that webinar that shows, by comparison to an entrepreneur who's starting up a one-off business, over the course of 10 years, what does the success trajectory look like? The number of businesses that are still, as you said, a going concern. And I do have that. Let's see, screen share.
There we go. Yeah.
So the green line is, I'm sorry, this is a chart over the course of 10 years. The green line is franchises. And I'll give you a couple of caveats to this slide. Franchises that are still open and operating, it does not necessarily mean that they haven't transacted. Like, for example, when I sold my Great Clips would say, well, those are 5 locations that never shut down. That is correct. I sold, so they can count those as open operating locations, going concern. The blue line is the entrepreneurial world. And this is based on entities that are registered with the government. In other words, an LLC, you've got an EIN, and whether or not you're still filing taxes and reporting revenue. So this is over the course of 10 years.
Pretty clear.
Pretty clear.
What do you think that that clear dip in the entrepreneurial side is? It's interesting that the franchises are pretty consistently at that high level, but then there's been this drop in success rate for entrepreneurial businesses.
Well, and so I'm an entrepreneur, and John, you know what this is like. Every day you get up, regardless of what kind of business it is, you own it. The buck stops with you. These 125 companies that my husband and I are invested in, we work closely with these entrepreneurs to make sure that every day they've got gas in the tank, they're taking care of themselves, they've got protection around their brain so that they can continue to be the visionary founder, surround themselves with mentors, and see their own weaknesses so that they can hire around those weaknesses. Not every entrepreneur has the staying power. And I've got something on my desk that I'm going to hold up for you. I was at a conference, Great Clips conference, a number of years ago. In the middle of the table was a box. Our vice president of operations was at the podium, and he said, you know, all of you, I hear your complaints. You talk about wanting to quit. You talk about how hard it is. You've got this community of other owners around you. And that's a key element, John, is entrepreneurs don't have that posse of other business owners who are waving the same banner, who are riding the same horse, who are trying to cross the same finish line. And what was in the box is this, a silver bullet, and I keep it on my desk to remind me that every day there is no magic bullet. There is no magic answer. I have to fight the good fight every day. So that dip in the blue line really is the resiliency that tends to wear down the entrepreneur. It may also be financial reasons, personal reasons, market conditions, a pandemic you never saw happening, coming.
Right.
So other
Right.
conditions as well.
So I have one more question that I want to throw it open more to the group, but this is kind of the key bottom line question. How much money does it take to start to buy yourself into buy your way into a franchise? If you don't have any cash, can you leverage your way in? What does it take to start a business if you basically don't have the financial resources that people think you need in order to put cash down on a franchise?
So that's a complex, multi-layered question with a lot of different answers. For starters, I tell people, if you're accustomed to making six figures, plan on investing six figures in order to get a six-figure return that may be exponentially a higher number than what you're making right now over the course of those 10 years that you're in business. I work with people who are very underfunded and looking there. They ask, is there a way, what about a partner? Can you introduce me to somebody who's the money shot, the money angle on this? I say that's very risky to do. That's getting into bed with somebody you don't know, and they're never silent. They have high expectations. So the answer is going to be very tailored to the individual. What does your credit score look like? What are your assets? What kind of an opportunity would a lender present to you at a fair rate? I have historically leveraged my home equity line of credit. I've leveraged my brokerage account. You can borrow against your brokerage account at very favorable rates, in fact, versus say going to the Small Business Administration and getting an SBA loan. And that's a governmental loan. And a lot of people go that way, which is fine. So it's an individually tailored answer depending on your financial status. And again, credit score, assets, and your willingness. I would say that the comfort level is not going to be immediate. You should be skeptical until I will help you with this, talk to enough owners to really understand how your projections are comparing to their actual profit and loss statements. That way we can get a much more accurate idea of profitability, owner benefit, and some of the other reasons that people get into business. It's not all to replace the paycheck. Some of it is tax advantages as well.
Got it. Leon, you had a question.
Yeah. So I have a friend who's into some franchises, and I've thought loosely about maybe entering it. And I was wondering about like what you think are some of the key characteristics of those that are fit for this. Not just time of life, but actually like the key attributes of somebody. Right now I'm kind of like just to give you a quick snippet for me is that I spent pretty much my whole career in like IT and consulting, and now kind of like having spent the majority of my career in the corporate world, feel disillusioned and kind of in a weird spot, very weird spot actually, because of my age. So I was thinking about, sort of taking it, and that's why I found John's thing here, is just thinking about doing something different outside the box. But I was curious about like what are some attributes of the people that you see fit for this?
So yeah, good question. And I've got a slide in that presentation that I'm going to send to John to share that covers a lot of these. But off the top of my head, spousal support. Is your spouse on board with this? If you have one, key significant other people in your life, they're going to be your cheerleader. And it's like going to the doctor and getting a diagnosis. If you go together, then you hear things differently, but you really need to be in alignment with whoever lives in your household. Financially, again, what is your credit score? What is your credit worthiness? And what kind of assets do you have to either put into the business or that you're willing to borrow against? Stick-to-itiveness, fire in the belly. That's my silver bullet. So it is a fitness trait to have that fire in the belly and that willingness every day to get in there and keep doing it, because those first 18 months are going to be a test and a training ground. Oh gosh, what other elements are there? People who have played on a sports team are really great in franchising because they understand that we're stronger together. Think about any of your sports teams out in whatever city you're in. California has plenty of them. Those are all franchises. So everybody knows what the rules of engagement are. And that's a key trait as well for franchise ownership, is that you're not so far down the entrepreneurial path in your head that you're going to question everything. You need to be able to follow that recipe or the rules. They know the template of how it works and who's going to be successful. They've got a profile typically of who their most successful franchise owners are. So those are some of my off the top of my head key elements, key traits to fitness and readiness. It's not an age thing. It's really so much more than that.
How much risk is associated with like saturation in the market for a given geography and things like that? Sorry, I don't want to steal other people's questions.
No, good
I just
question.
thought I'd throw that in.
It's another one of my top questions that I get asked. So good call on your part. Competition. The beautiful thing about franchising is that we track consumer demand. I specifically track a site called franchiseinsights.com, where the consumer dollar is going. Because you can really get in your head about, is now a good time to invest, or is the market oversaturated? Getting back to that fighting spirit, franchising is appealing to consumer demand that is broad, not niche, but it's common. Your car needs to work. You need a haircut. Now that said, you look at something like a Great Clips. When I got into it, there were 15 other direct competitors in value price family hair care. 15. And my parents said to me, this is back when I was in my late 20s, early 30s. Oh, Maggie, that's a chop shop. It's not a chop shop if you hire correctly, maintain quality, and give the customer that 100% satisfaction guarantee, reliable, predictable. So franchising, I'm not so worried about competition as much as I'm worried about you and how are you, Leon, going to do in a crowded field. And let me put it in another term, another mindset. Y'all are free agents. How much competition is there for the jobs you're interviewing for? How do you stand out? So the good news about franchising is that we're not offering one job to one person. You are looking for a product or service that you're going to offer to many people who recognize the need for it. Now you need to carve your differentiated path and your own story as to why they should do business with you on top of what is the branding that goes with that particular franchise.
This kind of leads into a related question, which is about experience. So, off the top of my head, the question is, what kind of experience, either business or life, goes into that decision? And do you want to choose a business that kind of maps to your prior experience in some way? Or is it really more about general experience in business, having that stick-to-itiveness, having the ability to make more mature choices, which would tend to support success versus someone who is immature in business and won't understand that they have to look at the quality of the product and the delivery versus, whatever that business might be.
Well, so I would tell you that all of us on this call have been around the block. We probably crashed and burned a couple of times, had some things that have shaken up our confidence. And I don't know how many of you feel that imposter syndrome thing that do I?
Sure.
That comes up all the time. The more important thing, the element for people who are on this particular webinar, none of us is a spring chicken here. We're not a 25 to 30-year-old who's dreamy and not and inexperienced. But that said, John, I was 28 when I got started, and I was 30 in my early 30s when I got divorced. So what really compelled me was need. I had to figure it out. I had been married with a 2-year-old at the time. I was in sales. I'd never managed anybody ever, except my 2-year-old. That's not... So that imposter syndrome, I say, get rid of it. Think more about that toolkit of experience that you've built up throughout your career, your personal life. That's what adds the context to an employee or to a client where it comes to the culture that you're going to create that will attract and retain your employee population, if you have employees or contractors. I know many of you are in California, so the big difference out there. And then for your client, leverage that experience. We've got so many more touch points of we've been married, divorced, had kids, raised kids. So don't underestimate the value of your personal and professional experiences to override actual experience. And I will tell you what I tell everybody. You pick up that toilet brush, you pick up that, whatever that thing might be, I will break your knees. That is not a reason to own a business. It's very singular and focused. You're buying yourself a job. I need you to look more broadly at what are you passionate about so that we don't ruin what nurtures your soul and allows you to unplug. Like if you come to me and say yoga, I love yoga. I want to own a yoga business, but that's really how I get away from my family. And I'm never going to give you a yoga studio because that'll ruin what nurtures you. I want you to be passionate about your role in the business and the value that creates for your employees as well as your clients.
Right. So it's the old line about, you're such a great cook. Whenever I come over for dinner at your house, you do these great, you show up in a restaurant, right? And of course the answer is no. So what you're saying is that sometimes the what nurtures us, the passion, the hobby, the love is not a good idea when it comes to turning that into a business.
Correct. In fact, it pretty much 100% of the time will ruin what you love.
Right. Let me shift gears a little bit to a question that I know that you put down on your list, which is, can I buy an existing franchise business? Is there a way to kind of get in and piggyback on someone's success? Maybe they're tired or, for whatever reason they're getting out, but this is a way of me to kind of jump in and not have to be part of that curve of establishing the business in that particular location or in that territory.
Yep. So I am asked this question all the time. People would like to buy revenue. And so a couple of different analogies. I love analogies. Have you ever adopted an older animal?
Right.
Or a kid? They come with baggage. You just need to be prepared that there are skeletons in the closet and things that are unpredictable, and you're now in the driver's seat of an airplane and you need to figure out how to get this thing to land. There are some great resale opportunities that pop up, and there are some other ones that have a hair of the dog. They're not so pretty. I told the story earlier about selling my 5 locations, and I got a great exit because they all did what they were supposed to do. If you're going to step into one that the owner has become tired, it's really fallen way far off the track of what that branding is. That's more of a turnaround that company might rather have an existing franchisee jump in and take over because they understand the way that it's supposed to operate and can turn that battleship around more quickly and confidently than an outsider would. Right. So there's some discernment from the franchisor as to whether they would even show you a resale opportunity. Right.
So the bottom line sounds like it probably is better to start from scratch and go through the learning curve rather than risk acquiring someone else's sinking ship?
Yeah. And of course, the standard answer is it depends. But I have seen in my career, having purchased, my husband and I roll up businesses all the time. I've watched this movie before, so I really can vouch from personal experience that it may look great on the surface, but we really need to dig deep and evaluate your own skill sets and be honest with yourself about what is it going to take, but because it's going to take more than time and effort, it's going to take money as well.
Yeah. I got a whole bunch more questions, but I want to open it up to the folks to see if anyone else has got something on their mind that they want to contribute or ask Meg about.
I see Joe put a question in there. The franchise is different from the entrepreneur source. That is a franchise where somebody with no experience can buy a franchise license in order to sell franchises. Those people are more like brokers. Franchise, we've got more than 300 companies in our portfolio. There are thousands of franchises that are out there. I leverage my corporate offices up in Minneapolis. They do a lot of the preliminary research the same way I would have you do your own research in order to verify that these concepts are a good fit for you. Franchises come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. So we, at one point, I think we cut it down to about 100 really gold standard franchises, but it wasn't enough. So we expanded it back over 300, and they're in many different diverse industries, not just food. So the answer is yes.
Right.
And I'll just go back to that. Actually, one of the differentiators of working with me versus, and I'll just toot my own horn here, versus anybody else or the eSource or some of the others that are out there, I've walked this walk. I don't just talk about it. I am a franchisee to this day. I'm a business owner. And so when it comes to your fears and concerns and getting the answers that you really need, I've asked those questions. I'm confronting some of the questions that I wish I'd dig deeper on. So I'm here to shine a light and make your research easier by piggybacking on what I've learned over the last 30 years.
Thanks.
You bet.
Meg, you've got a question here that was on your list that I wanted to drill down on. What do you mean by how can your expertise really be free? What do you mean by that?
So as a franchise consultant with franchise, you never pay me anything. There are no hidden fees. There are no pass-through costs. The relationship that franchise has with our portfolio companies, every one of them is on a contract. They all know that a consultant like me is going to help you to navigate. So if we have a successful placement, then I am compensated by that franchise company through franchise, not ever by you. I do like to do this, John. I hold up my phone and say, once we're connected, you can text me. I guarantee that my phone just rang a minute ago from somebody I've worked with, because I work with my past placements all the time, whether they want to sell, they've run into a brick wall, they need some advice. So that's something that I can offer to people that not every broker or consultant could. Got it.
And timing, you also talk about timing and the question about timing. Yeah. And is it kind of like the stock market? You never want to it's not about your timing in the market, it's about your time in the market. Do you take that kind of an attitude where there really is no good time or bad time to buy in?
Yeah, and I had made reference to that website where I'm monitoring consumer sentiment, where the dollar is going. People are so full of concern right now about, is there a recession? What about interest rates? What about this election that we've got? I want you to think about yourself during the pandemic. Did you stop eating, educating? This is where the kids, pets, parents, health, fitness, wellness, beauty, technology, all of these industries through the pandemic. And I had so many people who said, dodge the bullet on that one. But they didn't really dodge the bullet because consumers were still consuming. It's just a matter of what were they consuming and at what pace or frequency so that it makes a viable business.
Right. What else? Who else has got a?
Yeah, what else?
I imagine
maybe you answered this already. If so, my apologies for asking it again. But what has been the biggest kind of toe stub that someone going down this path that you've seen that we should avoid, I guess, or try to avoid?
The lesson I learned from my first entree into business, because my ex-husband didn't pay attention to your wife, your life, and your money. I really dig my degrees in counseling, by the way. My mom founded a hospice, and so I have a very high emotional intelligence. I'm digging, Bob, for why are we having this conversation? What's this going to do for you? How's it going to impact your life? Is it going to make your life better? Are you going to be happier than where you are right now? And so those aren't easy off the top of your head questions to answer, really. You'll give me a pat answer, but I really need the nuts and bolts of what's this going to do for you? So I hope that answers the question.
So if I can kind of interpret your answer, what you're saying is that you're a toe stub preventer.
Yeah.
because you are really digging deep on what are those factors where the toe stubbing could occur, and you're preempting that from occurring. But I would say, just to kind of restate Bob's question, what are some of those areas? I mean, we talked about some of this already, this idea of you don't want to go with your passion, right? And your wife, your life, and your money. You want to kind of have a strong foundation before you jump in.
Yeah.
So we can all see where both of those situations can go south. Are there any other scenarios that you have seen, kind of higher level, more obvious examples of people who make these kind of fatal mistakes?
Yeah, and I think the fail mistakes where people come back to me and say, "Oh my God, what have I done? This is the worst thing. This is the worst." Okay, well, tell me why is it the worst, and what did we overlook? Where were we not honest or thorough? I have said to many people, "You're not ready. You're not being realistic. You're not asking the right questions. You're not digging deep enough." I think that from a financial standpoint, you're way too starry, dreamy. This is going to solve everything. It's not. It's not. Let's talk about the impact that it's going to have. And in the end, making the money will solve some things, but the big stubbing of toes really comes from not being completely realistic and honest with yourself, and then for me, if I can tell that you're not really ready, and that fear, you should never feel pressured. You should never feel like you're going to make somebody else happy. People who get married, they know that you shouldn't be getting married, but they've already put the time and effort and everything into it, so they do it anyway. That's a horrible reason to say yes. And I'm here to stop that. So if I get the sense that this really is not the right thing, let's shut it down and say, "Gosh, look at what I learned." The answer is no. No is just as valuable as a yes.
Great. All right, well, let's wrap it up. Any kind of last words of wisdom, Meg, as we kind of look into the fall and the new year, and people who may be kind of coming off of this call thinking, a lot of new information I hadn't thought of before. Where should they go to start getting familiar with this whole concept of buying into a franchise business? Maybe for people who have felt like, I could never be entrepreneurial. Here may be a way for them to have some of the advantages of entrepreneurship, and at the same time, some of the protections of a more prescribed corporate path.
So if you were to put my name into your search bar, Meg Schmitz, it will pull up my website, my LinkedIn profile, all my social media. I spend a tremendous amount of time putting together articles, podcasts, et cetera, that are informative, educational, enlightening. Do your research on who I am. So go ahead and put my name in your search bar and root around a little bit. As you know, the cost to work with me is nothing. I'm happy. This is something kind of interesting I haven't talked about yet. Back in 2012, I was out walking the dog. There was that divorce that came that was ugly. 2008, thought I was going to lose everything. 2012, I was out walking my dog and I thought, I got enough money in the bank to pay off my mortgage and my son's college tuition that his dad reneged on. I'm going to call myself retired from now on. I'm going to look at all of this for joy, fun, and yes. So I'm going to work when I want to work. I'm going to work with the people I want to work with. So when you work with me, it's not obligatory. This is your research process. So do a little homework on me. Just know that once we do get engaged, we have conversation. And some of it may seem really tangential and obscure, but the context of your life, the things that you can't put into your resume or your LinkedIn profile, is what creates the fabric of who you are and what will make you happy going forward. So I really push to get to know the you that is not the obvious you, so that I can start to help you put the pieces together of whether this is the right kind of strategy for you. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wrote down franchiseinsights.com. Are there any other sites that people can go to kind of get a feel of what's going on, and any kind of trade press that they should be following, just to kind of figure out if the flow is something that resonates with them personally?
Yeah, so I see Gina has a question in there. Let's see if we can get to that. But there are a couple of books that I recommend. One is written by one of my colleagues. His name is Rick Bizio. I'll hold it up. Whoopsie, I just dropped everything. So The Educated Franchisee by Rick Bizio. I keep it here on my desk because I am a franchisee. I look at my portfolio and go, ooh, that looks really cool. Maybe I should own one of those. So Educated Franchisee is a great resource. It's written in layman's terms. It covers a lot of details, jargon, lingo. What are the ins and outs of how do you choose a franchise? I will help you dive deeper into that, but that's a great book. There's another one called The Wealthy Franchisee, another one called The E-Myth Revisited, which I bet some of the people on this call have heard of before or maybe listened to. You don't need to get through the whole thing to get the real essence of understanding who you are, and are you really more entrepreneurial or frantreprenorial, or should you just avoid owning a business altogether? So those are some of the resources that I lean on to help answer those questions.
Right. And I will get all that information from you and put it in the show notes for the recording. But let's get to Gina's question and then we'll wrap up.
So the question is there in the chat. Yes, I do.
Let's just state it for those who are not on the chat. Curious to know whether or when the corporate franchise person might pull out of a given market and how franchisees are compensated or not. I'm thinking of some locations where there are minimum wage laws coming into effect, e.g. Los Angeles.
Yeah, some states are just harder than others, and a lot of franchise companies know that they need to avoid those states. They tend to be California, Washington, Illinois, Maryland, and New York. They have labor laws and other more pejorative business practices that make it less advantageous. So that is part of my process, is to find out, where do you live? What is your zip code? And which companies don't even want to be in your area? To answer your question, yes, I've seen this happen where it happens with entrepreneurs too, where a franchise just in the middle of the night dries up and goes away and leaves somebody with nothing. What recourse do you have? It's all pretty standard recourse. If they've really dried up and blown away and there's nothing to be found, no pennies left, then the good news is you still have a business model and no one who's going to sue you about continuing to use that trade name and those business practices. If they simply pull out of a market or a state, then typically there's a conversation that they will have ahead of time before doing that, stating what the reasons why are, and then work with those owners in order to figure out what's plan B Are they going to give you an exit out? Do you remain in? And what kind of support are they going to give you? So the answer on that one is going to depend on the franchisor and what kind of legs and money, experience and money they have to support you if they pull out but leave you in.
Yeah. So Gina, you're raising your hand. Do you want to come on audio and or video and ask your question?
No, sorry, it was just a thumbs up.
Oh, okay, great. Oh, good,
yeah,
good.
curious.
Thanks.
Thanks for
Thanks,
the
So,
answer.
I mean, interesting, Meg. So, you know, there's no free lunch, right? You know, you've got some rewards, you've got some risks, you've got some upsides, you've got some potential downsides, and these are part of the, these are some of the considerations that you want to weigh, whether you're going into a franchise business or any business for that matter.
Or any business, correct. It's, if you think about it, boiling it all down to the very beginning, these are entrepreneurs who had an idea. So they still exist with the same legal elements as a one-off entrepreneur. So are there benefits? Absolutely. And this is, we can get into this in a one-on-one conversation, but I represent concepts that are anywhere from 2 corporate locations and absolutely no proof of concept, caution, to hundreds of units across the country with still room to grow where it's a brand name that you would recognize. So I work with the whole gamut. We just need to figure out where are you on the risk-o-meter.
Got it. This has been great. Really chock full of fun and information today. Thank you, Meg, for joining us and giving us this great overview of the franchise business and the opportunities they're in and the risks, et cetera. And Eber is applauding you. I'm sure we will all agree that. And thank you for your time today. So all of the information that we talked about, if I can kind of collect it, I'll collect it from you. We can go into this. I will put in the show notes for both the listing in the MCL and on the YouTube channel. So thanks, everyone. We will see you again in October. We'll have another guest with us, and have a great month.